Welcome back to another deep dive. We're continuing our series on finger analysis, really getting into some of the fascinating details. And this time we're going to be talking about some things that I think you'll find really surprising. Last time we were talking about the ratio between your index and ring fingers.
Right.
The 2D, 0.4D ratio.
Yeah.
And how that can give us hints about your prenatal hormone exposure.
Yeah, we explored how a lower 2D.4D ratio often suggests higher prenatal testosterone exposure, while a higher ratio, might indicate higher prenatal estrogen.
Exactly. And, it turns out that these ratios might be linked to a lot more than just hormones.
Right.
Today, we're going to be exploring how they can relate to your personality.
Okay.
Even things like aggression and agreeableness.
Interesting.
And get this, even physical characteristics, like your BMI and your waist-to-hip ratio.
Wow. It's fascinating how much information might be hidden right there in plain sight on our fingertips.
Isn't that interesting? So to kind of kick things off,
Yeah.
we're going to be looking at a study by Rostov and colleagues from 2019.
Okay.
It was published in Social Evolution and History.
Okay.
They examined 2D.4D ratios across 4 distinct ethnic groups: Armenians, Russians, the Obugrek people,
The Obugrek.
and Buryats.
Okay, yeah. And it's the Obugrek people that make this study particularly interesting. They're indigenous to Western Siberia, and they have this really unique blend of Caucasian and Asian ancestry.
Oh, okay. So how does that tie into their finger ratios?
Well, the study found that, as expected, the Buryats, who are of Asian descent, had the lowest average 2D.4D ratios. And then these ratios increased as you moved westward, with the Armenians having the highest. But here's the kicker. The Obugrek people, with their mixed ancestry, fell right in between the two groups.
So their finger ratios literally reflect their blended heritage.
Precisely. It's almost like a physical manifestation of their genetic and cultural blending.
That's incredible. Now, the study also looked at the big 5 personality traits.
Yes, they did.
Openness to experience conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Yes. And they actually found differences in openness, conscientiousness, and neuroticism across the ethnic groups.
Hold on, can you give like a really quick breakdown of the big 5 personality traits for any listeners who might not be familiar?
Sure. Openness to experience is about your willingness to try new things and embrace new ideas. Conscientiousness reflects your level of organization, responsibility, and self-discipline. Extroversion is about your energy levels and how you gain energy, whether from social interaction or from being alone. Agreeableness refers to your tendency to be cooperative and compassionate. And neuroticism measures your emotional stability and tendency to experience negative emotions.
Gotcha. So how do these traits play out in the different ethnic groups?
Well, the ethnic differences in personality actually aligned with previous research comparing European and Asian cultures. For example, Europeans tend to score higher on openness to experience, and in this study, they also had higher 2D.4D ratios.
So we're seeing a potential link between those prenatal hormones, finger ratios, and even broad cultural differences in personality.
Exactly. It's all intertwined. But it's important to remember that these are just correlations, not definitive proof that one causes the other. It's a complex interplay of factors.
That makes sense. But this whole idea that, prenatal hormones are somehow influencing personality is pretty mind-blowing.
It really highlights the profound impact of our early development.
It does. So moving on, what about aggression? Is there a connection between finger ratios and aggressive tendencies?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. Some studies have shown a link between low 2D.4D ratios, remember that means higher prenatal testosterone, and higher levels of aggression. But surprisingly, Rostov-Seva's team didn't find that connection in this particular study.
So what did they find?
Well, they found that age was a stronger predictor of aggression than 2D.4D ratios. Across all 4 groups, younger men reported higher aggression levels.
Ah, so that makes me think about that whole young male syndrome idea, right? All that teenage angst and all the energy.
Exactly. The theory suggests that this increase in aggression among young men stems from evolutionary pressures and risk-taking behavior. In many species, young males often have to compete for resources and mates, which can lead to more aggressive tendencies.
Right, like when you watch those nature documentaries and you see all the males fighting for dominance.
Precisely. And you combine that with all the hormonal changes happening during puberty and, well, things can get a bit heated.
Definitely. Okay, so we've talked about aggression. What about agreeableness? Is there a connection there too?
Yes, both Rostov-Seva's team and another study by Fink and colleagues, which was published in the Annals of Human Biology in 2003, found a positive correlation between higher 2D.4D ratios, again indicating higher prenatal estrogen and agreeableness in men.
So basically, the guys with longer index fingers relative to their ring fingers tend to be more agreeable.
That's what the data suggests. And what's fascinating is that Rostovtsava's team also found that men with lower 2D.4D ratios were not only less agreeable, but also more aggressive. It's almost as if these two traits are on opposite ends of a spectrum.
It makes you wonder if those prenatal hormones are setting the stage for certain personality tendencies, right? Not determining everything, but maybe giving us a nudge in a certain direction.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And you know what's really intriguing? These finger ratios might also be connected to physical characteristics.
Okay, I'm all ears. What have researchers found?
Well, Fink's study found some pretty interesting connections between 2D.4D ratios and adult body composition. In women, a higher 2D.4D ratio was linked to smaller waist and hip circumference and a lower waist to chest ratio.
So in women, a higher 2D.40 might mean like a more slender physique.
Yeah, that's what the data suggests. Now, in men, it was a different story. A higher 2D.4D ratio was linked to a higher BMI.
Interesting. So it really seems like these prenatal hormones could have a lasting impact on how our bodies develop, even into adulthood.
Yeah, it's possible. It's all this interplay, between early hormonal influences and then puberty and how those things come together to create those sex-specific physical features.
So we've been talking about all these fascinating connections between finger ratios and personality traits and even physical characteristics. But I'm curious, what are the practical implications of all this? Like, where could this research lead us?
That's a great question. I think one of the most exciting possibilities is in personalized medicine. Imagine if we could use these simple measurements to identify individuals who might be predisposed to certain health conditions.
So like we could tailor healthcare plans based on someone's finger ratios.
Exactly. It could be a game changer for preventative care.
But what about the ethical implications? I mean, could this lead to discrimination based on someone's finger ratios?
That's a really valid concern, and it's something we need to address very carefully. Any new technology or scientific discovery comes with potential risks, and it's really crucial that we use this knowledge responsibly.
Totally. We need to make sure that it's used ethically and doesn't lead to harmful outcomes. But aside from healthcare, are there other potential applications for this research?
Definitely. Think about education. Imagine if we could use finger ratios to help identify students who might thrive in certain learning environments or who might need extra support in specific areas.
Wow. So we could actually personalize education based on individuals' strengths and weaknesses.
Precisely. It could really revolutionize how we approach learning and development.
So it's not just about, understanding ourselves better, but also about creating more tailored interventions and support systems for people.
Right. And, this research could also have implications for psychology and counseling. If we can better understand how early hormonal influences shape our personality, we could develop more effective therapeutic approaches.
That's exciting. So we've talked about healthcare, education, psychology. Are there any other areas where this research could make a difference?
Well, some researchers are exploring the use of finger analysis in forensic science.
Wait, how could finger ratios be used in forensics?
Imagine being able to analyze a suspect's finger ratios and gain insights into their potential behavioral tendencies. It could be a really valuable tool for criminal profiling and investigations.
I can see how that would be incredibly useful.
Yeah.
But it also raises some red flags, Could this information be misused or lead to unfair biases in investigations?
Absolutely. That's why it's crucial to use this technology responsibly and ethically with all the appropriate safeguards in place. We need to ensure that it's used to promote justice, not prejudice.
Right. It's all about finding that balance between, the potential benefits and the potential risks.
Exactly. And I think this research could even help us understand entire societies better. By studying population-level differences in 2D.4D ratios, we might gain insights into cultural evolution, migration patterns, even the roots of human diversity.
So we could actually trace history through our fingertips.
It's almost like having this biological record of our past.
So all of this research is basically pointing to the idea that, there's so much more to our fingers than we realize. They're not just tools for, grasping objects. They're also this window into our biology, our personality, even our history.
I couldn't agree more. It's a reminder that our bodies are full of surprises and there's still so much we don't know.
And that's what makes science so exciting, right?
Yeah.
It's this never-ending journey of discovery.
Absolutely. And who knows what other hidden connections are still out there waiting to be uncovered.
Speaking of uncovering hidden connections, let's dive back into those studies we were discussing. So we talked about how age might play a role in those aggression levels.
Right.
But what about cultural factors? Did the researchers find any differences in aggression levels between The ethnic groups.
Yeah, they did. The Armenian and Bugric men reported higher levels of physical aggression and anger compared to the Russian and Buryat men. However, there's kind of a twist to this. The Armenian and Bugric groups were also significantly younger on average. So it's hard to say for sure whether those differences were due to culture, age, or maybe a combination of both.
So it seems like more research is needed.
Always.
Yeah.
That's the nature of science. It's an ongoing process, exploration, discovery. Each study adds to our understanding, but it also raises new questions.
I'm noticing a theme here.
Right. Science is never truly finished. There's always more to learn, more perspectives to consider, more mysteries to unravel. That's what keeps us going.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today, from the potential of finger analysis in personalized medicine and education to the ethical considerations and the need for more research. But before we wrap up, I have one lingering question. We've talked about how these finger ratios might be linked to personality and physical traits, but what's the actual biological mechanism at play here? Like, what's happening in the body that's actually connecting these things?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's a question that scientists are still working to fully understand, but there are some really intriguing theories out there. One idea is that the hormonal environment that we're exposed to in the womb can have these really long-lasting effects on the development of both our brains and our bodies.
So those prenatal hormones aren't just shaping our brains, they're actually influencing our physical development too.
Exactly. Think about it. The same hormones that are involved in brain development also influence things like bone growth, fat distribution, and the development of sex-specific characteristics. It's all interconnected.
Wow. So it's really not just nature versus nurture. It's nature and nurture working together to shape who we are.
Precisely. And I think this research really highlights just how complex human development really is. It's not about one single factor. It's about the interplay of our genes, our environment, and those early hormonal influences. All of those things are weaving together to create who we are.
It's really amazing. And it's like we're seeing this whole new layer of the human story unfolding right before our eyes.
I agree. And it makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden within our biology just waiting to be discovered.
That's the beauty of science, right? There's always something new to discover, always more to learn. And this field of finger analysis, it feels like we're really just getting started.
We are. It's a wide open field with so much potential for future research.
So what are the next steps? Like, where do we go from here?
Well, I think one crucial step is to replicate these findings across different populations and cultures. We need to make sure that these connections hold true in a variety of diverse groups of people.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We can't really draw conclusions based on just a handful of studies.
Exactly. And we need to continue exploring the ethical implications of this research, As we learn more, we need to make sure that we're using this knowledge responsibly and ethically.
It's powerful information, and as they say, with great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely. But I really believe this research has the potential to be truly transformative. It could change the way we approach healthcare education, psychology, even criminal justice.
It is really exciting to think about all the possibilities.
It is. And I think the most important takeaway for our listeners today is this. Your body is full of stories. Your fingerprints, your DNA, your finger ratios, they all hold clues to your past, your present, and maybe even your future.
It's like we're walking around with all these hidden maps to ourselves just waiting to be deciphered.
Exactly. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep learning, and never underestimate the power of your own biology.
That's a great note to end on. So to all our listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of finger analysis. And remember, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to click like and subscribe to the Unlock Your Mind podcast for more deep dives into all sorts of intriguing topics. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring.